Did you ever have one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong? I did. Unfortunately for me, that day was my wedding day. 3 men in particular were to blame. It all started with the priest. I now pronounce you man and wife. Well done. You may now kiss the bride. Nice one. Okay, everybody, please be seated. I'd just like to say a word or two before communion. You know, a lot of prospective brides ask me these days, Father, what is the church's attitude to fellatio? And I tend to reply by telling them a little story about the first time I was asked that question. It was a couple of years ago now. The young, attractive bride-to-be came up to me after a service and asked just that question. Father, what is the church's attitude to fellatio? And I said, well, you know, Joanne, I'd like to help you, but unfortunately I don't know what fellatio is. And so she showed me. And ever since, whenever anyone has asked me the question, Father, what is the church's attitude to fellatio? I always tell them, well, you know, I'd like to tell you, but unfortunately I don't know what fellatio is. After that came my trusted best man. And ladies and gentlemen and fellow survivors of that stunning stag party, how did those two girls get under the table and what the hell are they doing with that toothpaste? Before I left the house this morning, I said to myself, the last thing you must do is to forget your speech. And so, sure enough, when I left the house this morning, the last thing I did was to forget my speech. Yes, you guessed it. So it's all ad-libbed from here, I'm afraid. Where to begin? I'd like to begin now. I've known the groom ever since we first went to school together at the age of 9. And you know, he hasn't changed a bit. Well, that's not quite true. He didn't have his beard back then. Oh, and I'll tell you this, he would never have been able to do whatever he was doing last night with those two extraordinary, how little people change, isn't it? Well, I know I've changed a great deal, because I used to be an absolute arse. Always blurting things out when I shouldn't have. I mean, this afternoon, I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to resist mentioning the bizarre sight that greeted my eyes when I opened this man's bedroom door earlier this morning. And, well, he's starting making gestures at me now, which I think means he wants me to cut my speech short. So, suffice to say, I think he'll make a ripping husband. I think his wife's ripping too. And I hope, well, I just hope the dress will hold. And so, I'd like to propose a toast to go with the pate to the groom and his lovely horse, wife. It's come back to me now. And I just know that their marriage will be as happy and satisfied as I was when I paid off those 2 prostitutes earlier this morning. Cheers! After that, my loving father-in-law provided the perfect end to a perfect evening. Ladies and gentlemen, and friends of my daughter, there comes a time in every wedding reception when the man who paid for the damn thing is allowed to say a word or two of his own. I would therefore like to take this opportunity, sloshed as I may be, to say a word or two about Martin. As far as I'm concerned, my daughter could not have chosen a more delightful, charming, witty, responsible, wealthy, let's not deny it, good-looking, well-placed, and fertile young man than Martin as her husband. I therefore ask the question, why the hell did she have to marry Gerald instead? Well, Gerald is the sort of man we used to describe at school as a complete prick. If I family's a gardening simile here. If his whole family may be likened to a compost heap, which I think they can, then he is simply the biggest weed growing out of it. I believe he is the sort of man people emigrate to avoid. I remember the first time I met Gerald. I said to my wife, she's that lovely woman popping up that horrendous old lush of a mother of his, I said, either this man is suffering from some horrendous brain damage, or the new vacuum cleaner has arrived. As for his family, they're simply the biggest herd of stealing social animals I've ever had the misfortune of turning my nose up to. I spurn you as I would spurn a rabid dog. I would therefore like to propose a toast to the caterers and to the pigeon that crapped on the groom's family's limousine at the church. As for the rest of you sat around this table, not directly related to me, you can all sod off. I won't trust any of you to sit the right way in a toilet.